but how intuition and tacit knowledge sit in terms of theory and practice. And of course that's very much within a kind of discourse of phenomenology. But I think as practitioners we draw upon our tacit knowledge and that kind of those cultural systems. But in a way we have to then draw into our intuition to allow the imagination to function. So I'm really interested in about how you see imagination within this.
Yeah, I mean that's for us it was a, you know, I mean Noriko introduced the text in one of our sessions, and the nice surprise is that you find at the end of the text a reference to Gaston Bachelard, which we focused for so long, and we still, you know, still.
That was wonderfully cyclically referential.
Yeah. And he's talking about Van Manen is talking about the importance of poetic writing for us, for artists, whereas theory thinks the world, practice grasps the world. It grasps the world pathically. So the word grasp, you know, I looked at the origin and all this, it brings together the notions of physically holding with one's hand and understanding. So this is just, you know, one kind of really important word that he's using. So Van Manen, I'll just read a little bit because it is connected. A classroom, an office, a hospital, or any environment where professional practitioners work agogically in service, teaching, healing, helping, counseling, or ministering relations with others. So sorry, this is page 21. So he's talking about in terms of rational thinking.
From Merleau-Ponty's phenomenology of perception, because they're both about embodiment and the lived experience. I couldn't quite see what the difference was.
As this text he provides, because what he's talking about is the affection is more like body experiences, and this is part of like life experiences. And in order to have a life experience, you need to experience it with your sense as well. So for me, it's connect.
Different dispositions that people experience, and I think it is that Merleau-Ponty is what universal. Like he looks at man as a universal man, whereas like for you very much focuses on the individual. You know, the individual habits of the people. And I think Van Manen is trying to bring both of them together, really.
But when Merleau-Ponty talked about
allow the world to exist, kind of, and what does it do in the world, and like how does it interact?
So, Bev, who writes about it? Who
Benjamin and
yeah, that's the kind of like point of origin, I guess. But yeah, there are a number of people who talk about that, and in relation to kind of like geographic practice.
Sure.
It says on page 23,
On the whole, the various scholars of the Utrecht school seem more than interested in doing phenomenology, and I think this bringing in the Utrecht school as a way of emphasising the practice of the phenomenality of the individual, and this really encompasses that idea. I think the Utrecht school doing phenomenology, and then he brings in the example of the child finding a space of solitude, and the example is called The Secret Place in the Life of the Child.
Yeah.
And there's also the relational aspect of that isn't there, because Merleau-Ponty's been highly criticised for being very much
away from the creativity of art and focus on the labour of art. So I did this project where I kind of handed over the creativity to a family, in particular the youngest daughter, who designed a room, and then I went and decorated the room. But I had to get all the materials on foot and walk to kind of the big out-of-town retail parks where she'd chosen the things and go and pick up the stuff and kind of negotiate the kind of traffic and all the stuff that was happening. And also physically, like I had to, there was one thing she wanted fireplace clad in beach pebbles, and actually the house was a 3 minutes walk from the beach, but I'd set these kind of parameters about having to buy stuff, you know, from the shops to talk about whatever various ideas. But and that was really interesting because then, you know, the labour of actually having to carry beach pebbles made me think about the process more, and it becomes like then the things that you do they're triggering your thoughts rather than your thoughts triggering the things you do. So it's like, oh, there's a conceptual starting point, almost like it reverses the process to the action we didn't fully conceptualise at the beginning. That then led to the theory through the action. I guess.
That's how art should be, though, shouldn't it?
That's what art Tolstoth, Liverpool.
It's in
There were
Liverpool,
just
yeah.
empty, Tolstoth, yeah. There were empty houses, old Victorian terraced houses.
What's the project?
The project has been, rather than, because the council wanted to just pull them all down and build new buildings, and of the locals didn't, because some of that area is actually still in use. So the community project is the people have come together to restore these buildings rather than them being knocked down and made them back into usable housing.
How is that an art project?
Well, it's for architects actually. They're not even artists.
Well, how is it a
female?
He was socially aware. He's not an artist. He doesn't classify himself as an artist. But the work he did in Granby Street is historical
Yes.
and is known across the country.
Yes, really interesting.
That did come into the information about that. What's happening now is that
And what they did, they formed a co-op so that neighbourhood housing services, although it was a service and an agency, it was not dictating to the locale. The locale and the people within the locale, and we were living in the area, we were part of it, we were socially within it, formed the co-op. So their views were taken into account. And the houses at that time, so I don't know what's happened between then and now, but the houses at that time were, do you call them decamped? So one family would move up the road where their house was restored, and what colours they wanted in the house was taken into account and remodelled, and then they would move back, and then but he wouldn't have ever referred to himself as a social art project. It was black paper, it came onto the white table, it got to the edge and it just flew off, so it was if I'd had enough. So I think the idea of being dominated by rational thought is central to
Society and our culture.
what's just become
Those kind of non-profit, kind of socially engaged projects.
well,
So they become on the side of art because it's like...
which again is another area that worries me hugely, and it comes under social need.
it might be worth looking up, and I'm sure there is some kind of reasoning behind why they've been nominated for the Turner Prize. I'm not attacking or criticising.
No, I'm just absolutely bowled over.
Yeah, one of the reasons is that not only are they local people that are doing this, they are using local craftspeople, and it's all being kept very, all local.
And it was a very patriarchal view of the individual as well. There's been a lot of feminists who've written criticisms. Trying to think of some off the top of my head. Well, Chris Staver, Irigaray, Elizabeth Ross, Judith Butler. If you look at that, some line.
His experience of the walking being the actual artwork, sort of the moment, and it just stirs up those thoughts really.
A philosopher called Suzanne Kozel, whose work we came across in an attempt to try and answer the question that Penny raised, which was how do you actually apply phenomenology to your practice? And there is a paper available on the internet that she devised. Well, it's a video that she'd actually made in her piece as a tutor on the Stanford University practice-based research. I think it's an MA course or something like that. And her interest in phenomenology started in the 1980s as a reaction against cyberpunk.